Hello guys, how's it going? I hope you're all doing well. Welcome to my true crime channel where I go into all the details of a true crime case whilst I do my makeup. Just before we get into the video, I feel I should give a very quick content warning that we are going to be discussing some pretty dark topics in today's video, such as severe abuse and neglect of a child and also murder. So if you are at all unsure about this video or feel it might affect you in any way, then please do feel free to click off this video and watch something else. I'd also like to give a disclaimer that all the information I've compiled in this video has been sourced from the internet, news reports and family statements. And although I research each case as thoroughly as I can before each video, and of course it is never my intention to spread misinformation or cause offence to anybody involved, please do let me know down below if you see any false information. So with that, let's get right into the case. Kayla Jade Priest was born on the 31st of January 2017. Kaylee's mother, Nicola, had got pregnant with Kaylee when she was 19, and I couldn't actually find out who Kaylee's father was, but he was clearly not still in the picture at the time of this case because Nicola was dating her 22-year-old boyfriend, Callum Redfern. In August of 2020, when this case took place, Nicola, who was now 23 years old, and Kaylee, who was 3.5, were living in Nicola's apartment in Kingshurst, which is about 9 miles east of Birmingham, which is in the north of the UK. Now, from what I could find out about Kaylee online, she was a very normal 3-year-old girl. She was very bubbly, very bouncy, and as most young kids do, she absolutely loved to play, and in particular, she loved to play outside. So on the 8th of August 2020, when this case took place, Nicola and Kaylee woke up as usual in the apartment, and then around the early afternoon, the two of them decided to go to the local park. And here you can see CCTV footage of the two of them leaving the apartment and taking the lift down to go to the park. Now, I don't know if you guys can tell just from this very short clip, but throughout this whole video, Nicola's body language is just so off. From what I could find out about Nicola online, from sort of family statements and from what friends said about her, she seemed to be a very vain person. She was pretty much always checking her reflection in one way or another in her phone camera, in mirrors. She just always seemed to be kind of looking at and admiring herself. Now, this in itself isn't a particularly negative thing, but for Nicola, it had got to kind of a point where it was obsessive, and it was the point where she wasn't really taking any notice of her daughter, Kaylee. In these clips, she is repeatedly swapping between checking her phone and looking in the mirror in the lift, and she also has a cigarette in her mouth. Now, as I say, this isn't in itself a particularly negative thing. I think we all kind of do the mirror checking thing to a certain extent, but as I say, it was getting to a point where Nicola was pretty much neglecting her daughter. She didn't even check back as they were walking to the park to make sure that Kaylee was still with her. Now, later down the line, when police actually analysed this CCTV footage, medical professionals were actually able to see that Kaylee had unhealed fractures, which pretty much suggested that the emotional abuse that she was receiving from her mother was also physical. They could actually tell from the way that Kaylee just sort of held herself and the way that she walked that she'd actually previously had 2 broken ribs, lower leg fractures, and also a broken sternum. And if you don't know what your sternum is, it's basically the piece of bone that kind of connects your rib cage. Now, Nicola was more than aware of these injuries which Kaylee had suffered, and not only did she not attempt to get Kaylee any sort of medical help, but this also meant that all these injuries and fractures and breaks had actually healed incorrectly. Now, the most unnerving thing about this CCTV footage is that this is actually the last time that Kaylee is seen alive before she is beaten to death by her mother and her mother's boyfriend. Now, after spending about an hour at the park, Nicola and Kaylee both returned to the flat, and later that evening, Callum Redfern, Nicola's boyfriend, went over to the flat to visit. The three of them spent the evening together just in the apartment, and from what I could tell, nothing seemed to be amiss. Nicola spent the evening planning her upcoming birthday party and also sent selfies to friends for approval before posting them on social media. At 7 p.m, it was time for Kaylee to go to bed, and as is so often the case with young kids, she really didn't want to go to bed. Nobody else was going to bed, and she just wanted to stay up and play. Now, once Callum and Nicola had put Kaylee to bed, the two of them decided that they wanted to have some time for themselves, and they went into Nicola's bedroom to have sex, and this is when things begin to go rapidly downhill. As the two of them began having sex, Kaylee, who was still next door, actually began to cry, and apparently, Nicola's daughter just wanting a little bit of love and attention was enough to send the two of them into a rage. I don't actually know the exact details or timeline of what happened after that, but what I do know is that either Nicola or Callum or both ended up beating Kaylee to death. Not only was Nicola able to just calmly stand by while her daughter was killed, pretty much for preventing her from having sex, but by the time emergency services were finally called, Kaylee had actually been dead several hours already. They just didn't call anybody. One of the things that I find almost most heartbreaking about this case is that Kaylee's life could actually have been saved if Nicola had called the emergency services sooner. Once the police were finally called to the apartment, they described the scene as unlike anything they'd ever seen before. Kaylee's body was actually still in her bed, and it was very clear to the police who first appeared at the scene that she had been kicked, punched, and possibly even stamped on many times over, and she'd actually started being physically sick as a result of these beatings. Kaylee had actually suffered brain damage and a punctured lung, but the official cause of death was said to be due to severe abdominal and chest injuries. Experts likened her injuries to that of a child who had been hit by a car going at 40 mph or from falling 3 floors onto concrete. Her own mother, or her mother's boyfriend, or both, we still don't really know, had done the same damage to this 3-year-old girl as a car going at 40 mph. Now, as I say, it's unclear who actually killed Kaylee. We don't know whether it was Nicola or Callum, but what we do know is that the abuse towards Kaylee intensified after Nicola started dating Callum, but Nicola is by no means innocent in this. Neighbours had previously reported hearing a loud bang from the apartment above theirs, which was Nicola's apartment, followed by Kaylee starting to cry and Nicola saying, and I quote, "I'll just say she fell off the bed." I don't want to think about what actually happened, but the fact that it could be heard through the floor, and also that it was severe enough for Nicola to need to come up with an excuse, probably tells you everything you need to know. Later on, when searching through Nicola's phone, police actually found texts to her boyfriend Callum talking about Kaylee, saying, "I'm gonna kill her. She keeps leaving the living room and going into the kitchen. I've already smacked her for soiling her nappy." To which Callum replied, "Good, give her one from me." Just talking about this actually boils my blood. Like, the fact that this 3-year-old girl was getting hit for walking around and using her nappy for its intended purpose. How a mother can treat her child like that just blows my mind. So by this point, you're probably wondering how TikTok comes into this. Basically, Nicola actually had a TikTok account where she would frequently post videos of her dancing or following trends, and Kaylee actually appears in these TikToks quite frequently. There are several videos where Nicola is dancing around, holding Kaylee's arms and sometimes even her head to make her dance. And to be fair, Kaylee does seem to be, smiling in these videos, but in all honesty, I think she's probably just happy to be getting some sort of attention from her mother, which doesn't result in her being injured. Anyway, 36 days after Kaylee's death, Nicola actually posted a TikTok to her TikTok account where she mouthed the lyrics to a song, apologising for having messed up bad. As you can see, something about this doesn't feel very sincere. Nicola had actually also posted TikToks previously to this talking about Kaylee, which she had captioned things like RIP followed by angel and crying face emojis. It's literally so twisted. Like, if it wasn't for you, she would literally still be alive and well. Both Nicola and Callum ended up being brought to court, and for some absolutely incredulous reason, they both were cleared of murder. They were, however, both convicted of manslaughter, and Nicola was given 15 years in prison, while Callum was given 14. I honestly don't know why they were given such a gentle sentence. I personally think that they should have been given life in prison, but who knows. One of the main things that grants a criminal a lesser sentence for their crime is showing remorse for their actions, but from what I can see, neither of them have showed an ounce of regret for their actions. In a police interview, when asked how Kaylee's death had affected him, Callum Redfern even said, "It's not my child, it hasn't affected me." This case is actually just mind-blowing. Like, the more I think about it, the more angry it makes me. I actually read a quote the other day that said, "All children deserve parents, but not all parents deserve children." And honestly, I think that kind of just sums up this case. Anyway, that is all I have for you on this case. I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure to let me know down below, and also let me know if there are any particular cases you'd like me to cover next. As always, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.